I'm so excited to do this webinar, and because I grew up playing soccer. I did play collegiately for a couple years in the Midwest, and then I continued my journey on to UNR, which is University of Nevada, Reno, where I studied my undergrad, my dietetic internship, and my master's, which I actually have a master's in sports nutrition, so I am a sports dietitian as well. So obviously soccer is my favorite sport. So excited to talk to you about it. It's personal and professional for me, and definitely recognize how important sports nutrition is, especially for our soccer players. Okay, so to kind of go through. First, the goal of this webinar tonight is to really focus in on learning how proper nutrition can help you perform at your top potential as an athlete. I know I got athletes and I got the parents out here, so I'm talking to the both of you tonight. Some of the objectives of what we're going to be talking about is learning why sports nutrition for soccer players is so important, learning kind of what to eat, and then also learning about how much and when to eat, because nutrition timing is really crucial as well. Okay, so I like to call this foundational nutrition. This is really where the athlete can be made. Why is sports nutrition so important? Well, to start, it improves and supports regular growth and development. It helps to achieve optimal performance. That's really what we're looking for. That means you are going to be playing your best throughout all those 90 minutes. You're playing your best at practice through those tournaments. It also proper nutrition also helps to reduce your risk of injury. And it also helps to reduce that recovery time between competitions. So when you're playing multiple games and you have that in-between time, proper nutrition can help to reduce that recovery time so you can be up and ready to go for that next match. It helps you to feel better physically and mentally. This is a crucial time, and where 12 to 17 years old, you're growing. And helps your body grow, but also mentally feeling really clear and sharp. And then also, obviously, helps to create good eating habits for life. So Sports Nutrition 101. To first start out, we're going to talk about all the things that really affect nutrition. It's so much more than just diet or nutrient intake, meaning the food and the drinks that you're putting in your body. Genetic makeup, age, growth, gender, sleep and stress, hydration, environmental factors. Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it humid? Is it dry? That affects. Availability to food, so food security and insecurity. Type of sport, so if you think a golfer or a tennis player eats very differently from someone who's playing soccer. The amount you train, so are you playing off-season, pre-season, or on-season, though you're going to be eating just a little bit differently, and more. So let's dive in. All right, and very quickly, just to note, we will be doing questions at the end for you as well. To start, obviously, soccer. So soccer is one of the most physically demanding sports, and it's vigorous training, very, very competitive games. So what that means is you have an increased need for energy. The failure to meet these increased needs when you're playing in season with quality nutrition can actually increase your risk of impaired training. What does that mean? That means you're not going to get the results that you deserve. You're not going to be playing to the best of your potential. So fueling to perform, fueling to recover, and then fueling to win. So we're going to dive in here, calories. First off, what are calories? And you'll see on your bottom right-hand side, I have what's called a food label or nutrition facts panel. And you'll see those calories in big bold, the 230. What that means is anytime you see calories, that is the measure of energy that you're getting from food. And everyone needs to have calories, and they need to have enough energy to get through their day. You're burning calories, you're burning that energy throughout. You're actually burning it through involuntary activities. So breathing, blinking, moving your arms, walking around, and obviously playing soccer. You're burning a lot of those calories, you're burning that energy, so you need to get it in as well. When it comes to calories in soccer, to kind of talk a little bit about age group of 12 to 14-year-old soccer players, you're burning anywhere between 325 to 670 calories per hour. So that's a lot. You're growing at the same time of playing. Then most high school players, you'll practice, especially in competitive leagues such as ODP, you're practicing anywhere between up to 3 hours a day, and that could be burning up to 2,000 extra calories per day. And then during your 90-minute games or matches, you'll be burning anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 calories just in that game. So what exactly does that mean? That means you need to eat a lot or drink a lot. It's really important to get in those calories. So here's some calorie needs for a 9 to 13-year-old boy. If you're not in season, you don't necessarily need as many calories. That's anywhere between like 16 to 2,000 calories. With the somewhat active, think of pre-season. So you're getting ready to go before you have your competitive games. You want to increase your energy needs or your calories, increase the amount of food and drink that you're drinking to get ready for it. Then active, you can think of that's the time when you're in season. You're ready to go, you got to get those calories in. So wherever you're at on your age group, this is a really good way of seeing how many calories you should be looking to get in. So we talked about calories, energy coming into the body. Well, there's 3 key components that you're looking for in every meal, and that's called macros or macronutrients. What a macronutrient is it's the main supplier of nutrients and calories in your diet. There's 3 main ones. So there's carbohydrates, there's protein, and then there's fats. So carbohydrates, that's the main source of an athlete's energy. Then we have protein. Protein doesn't only help to build, strong muscles. Protein actually helps to build nails, hair, skin, blood. So think of protein as the building block to your entire body. Then there's fats. You definitely want to get fats in, or healthy fats in, because they provide energy. They help to absorb certain vitamins that you're eating. So think of vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, and vitamin A. Those are all fat soluble. And then also helps to protect those vital organs. So, especially during this time, and in recent years, we've had a lot of nutrition research out there. We've also had a lot of fad diets talking about that are really popular, like ketogenic, or low-carb diets. So then there's now the question of what should I eat? What should my young athlete, what should they eat? Well, currently, the research still points to carbohydrates being an essential energy source for high-intensity athletic performance. What that means is carbs are still essentially the star of the diet for a soccer player, because that is considered a high-intensity athletic performance. What does the carbs do? So just to warn you, this gets pretty sciencey, but I'm going to try and break it down for you as to see that there's 3 main things that you're looking for in carbs that help during those soccer games with our athletes. First, when you have enough carbs, if you take a look at that lower right-hand area, we'll see gut. When you eat carbs, quality carbohydrates, and they go into the gut, it goes into what's called glucose or blood sugar, blood glucose. You have that, and that's ready to go. So right when that whistle starts and you're starting that game, your body's using that blood sugar to fuel, to start running and start cutting and getting going. But you also need to be able to store because you're going to run through that very quickly. And so carbohydrates or blood sugars that they store in our muscles and in our liver, that is called glycogen. And you want to make sure you have a lot of storage of energy as well, and that comes through carbohydrates. So when we have enough carbohydrates before our big game, that's going to help prevent that muscle breakdown from glycogen depletion. So what that means is it's going to help you to not feel as tired during your second half of your game, or during that 80th minute when you really got to go hard. You're going to have that energy, and that energy is coming from those carbohydrates. Then there's also this thing called hypoglycemia. To break it down, hypo means low, gly means sugar, and then emia means in the blood. So that word means low blood sugar. When you start to have low blood sugar in the middle of a game, you're going to start to feel really tired or fatigued. You might start to have a stomach ache, or you start to feel really dizzy or crampy. And having enough carbohydrates before that will help prevent for that to happen. And then carbs also are a key role in what our central nervous system functions. So I'm talking our brain and our spinal cord. Our brain actually functions about almost exclusively off of glucose. So that's the sugar in the blood. So our brain is functioning off those quality carbohydrates that you're putting in your body. So even though some of our parents may be doing low carb, that's totally fine. But for our young athletes, we got to make sure we have those quality carbohydrates in our meals. Then, I'm not sure if this is still a thing. I feel like it's a thing still. When I was playing soccer competitively, we would do carbohydrate loading. So one of my favorite things to do was when my parents had pasta parties for us the night before a big game. It was so fun. But there is definitely some benefit to carbohydrate loading, but we're going to talk about how to carbohydrate load correctly. And what I learned is the big pasta sauce or the big pasta party in the beginning or the night before wasn't necessarily the best way. What carbohydrate loading is, first, it means that you're consuming, so you're eating and drinking more carbs than you usually do to lead up to that big game. What that is doing is that is increasing that stored energy in your muscles, that glycogen load that are in your muscles. You want to do that because once your muscles get depleted of those stores, that's when you start to get really tired, and that's when playing the game feels a lot harder. Carbohydrate loading can help to maximize these energy stores, so make sure that those muscles are really ready to go with that stored carbohydrate, ready to have you go push through that entire game. However, the best way to carb load is to not necessarily have that pasta dinner that night before. It's to gradually eat and drink more carbs 6 days leading up to the game. So you're already having those meals. I'm going to show you what your plate should kind of look like, but having more and more carbs leading up to that game instead of loading it all in one night. On the side, you're going to see there's things called complex carbs and simple carbs. When I'm talking about carbohydrates, we want to focus in on the complex carbohydrates. The simple carbs that are coming from the chips and the candy and the sodas and the sports beverages won't give you as much of a benefit of storing in those muscles and being ready and giving you that energy that you need versus something like fruits, certain vegetables like sweet potatoes and bread, or like a whole grain bread, things like that. So now what does our plate look like? Well, this is one of my favorite plates to show, and this is geared towards athletes, specifically towards high-intensity athletes, so our soccer players. This is what we're looking at having during our hard training times. And what that is as you see, this is during season, you're looking at having about half your plate to really good carbohydrates. So it's not just those pastas, rice, and potatoes, it's also fruit. Then you want to make sure your other half of your plate has those leaner proteins in there, whether it's poultry, which is chicken, leaner red meat, fish, eggs, dairy. If you can drink milk can be a great option. And then at the other side, making sure you're getting those vegetables in. I know vegetables can be a little bit hard. There's a lot of ways to get vegetables in nowadays. And those will give you those vitamins and minerals that you're really needing to keep you going as hard and as fast as possible for the longest amount of time, making sure that you are at your peak performance. Because that's our goal, right? During the times that you're maybe a little bit more pre-season or you're not playing games for a couple of weeks, this is what your plate should look like a little bit more. Lowering those grains a little bit, so it's not about half your plate, it's a little bit less than that. And where we're increasing is we're increasing a little bit more of those vegetables. Like I said, you're getting a lot of vitamins and minerals in there. When you're playing really hard, you need those minerals. You need sodium, magnesium, potassium, chloride. All of those are coming from vegetables, and we're wanting those to really help you push through those last minutes of the game as well. And just so you know, we will be sending this. This is definitely not a webinar that I expect you to write everything down. We will be sending a downloaded version of this webinar after. So you absolutely please take this as options for you, for food options. As you see, we have carbohydrates and carbohydrates from fruit. So there's not listed necessarily a soda or candy in the carbohydrates. These are what we would call the complex or the higher quality carbohydrates that we're looking for. So you take this kind of food list, taking the plate and loading up these type of foods in that plate, about half with the quality carbohydrates, lean proteins, got a little fats on the side, and then obviously your vegetables. Okay. So we talked about food and how important food is. Well, just as important is hydration. Why do we need water? And just a note, Messi is definitely my favorite soccer player of all time, so I had to put him in here. Water, it improves muscle function, increases energy, reduces risk of injury, improves recovery, regulates blood pressure, improves circulation. So that seems like a lot. But think of it this way, our body is made up of over 60% water. So we want to make sure to have lots of water in our bodies at all times, because we lose water throughout the day. You lose water through breathing, through sweating, through going to the bathroom. So we need to have a lot of it in us at all times, because that's going to allow for our body to really feel good and work optimally. You see how much it's doing. So drinks, tips and tricks. To really start the day, great way to start the day is wake up in the morning and grab a big glass of water right when you wake up. Drink a glass of water right there, because right when you wake up, you are considered in a dehydrated state, so you're thirsty. Whenever you're feeling thirsty, that means you already should be drinking water. Another way to do it is to have a smoothie in the morning and eating fruits and vegetables. A lot of fruits and vegetables have a lot of water content in them. So drinking water and having fruits and vegetables, you're hitting that goal that you're looking at, which is 8 glasses a day. Water should be the primary source of fluid, and the great general rule of thumb is having 8 glasses a day. So that's pretty straightforward, and you can get that through the smoothies, fruits and vegetables, along with drinking water. So rehydrating. The amount of water does depend on how hard you play and the weather. So when it's hotter or more humid out and you're sweating a lot more, or you're breathing really hard, that means you need to get more water in. If it's a little bit colder, you still need to get water in, but you might not need as much as you do in a hot day. A good rule of thumb is about 16 to 20 ounces, so this is like 16 ounces of water 2 to 3 hours before the game. So drinking a bottle of water a couple hours before the game. Then, right about 10 to 15 minutes before you play, having about 8 to 12 ounces. So think of like just having about half of a water bottle, or grab a couple, get a couple gulps or sips in there right before, about 10 to 15 minutes before you're playing, as your coach is talking you through the lineup. Then, during playing, think of about 3 to 8 ounces every 15 to 20 minutes. That's a lot of numbers. So the thing that just focus in on sipping water whenever you can. When practice, anytime you have timeouts or in between drills, make sure to sip water. At halftime during games, make sure to sip water. Then there's the question, what about my sports beverages? What about my Gatorade, my Propels? What about those? Well, I would say water is the number one. And if you're just playing one game, really focus in on water. But during those tournament days, that's when you're looking for you can have those sports beverages. So a Gatorade, looking for about 5 to 8% carbohydrates. So look at that food label. Parents, take a look at that food label. and just make sure that there's not a ton of carbs in it. And also look for certain electrolytes. You want sodium, you want chloride, you want potassium in there. And then that's really going to help to play through those tournaments. This is just one to dive deeper. There's a lot of science behind hydration, especially when it comes to soccer players. So just think drinking that full bottle of water a couple hours before. Right before, make sure to try and get about 1/3 to 2/3, so you're wanting to get a good amount in there. And then during exercise, make sure to sip. After exercise, make sure to rehydrate, so drinking up to like 2 of these if you can. Okay, so when do we eat? Well, pregame. Making healthy choices, it is what's best for you. So this is what we call individualized nutrition. Find out what works best for you. What do you like? What do you dislike? What do you feel good? Does your belly hurt after eating something? Start to listen out. Does your head hurt? Do you feel tired? Start to ask yourself or ask your young athlete those questions so we can figure out what foods work and drinks work best. Don't experiment with food and drinks on game day or leading up to a game. So what I mean by experiment is maybe don't grab a new food that our young athlete has never tried before and eating that on game day, because sometimes that doesn't work as well. So fuel your body about 2 to 3 hours before practice or a big game. That's where you want that full plate, 2 to 3 hours before that game. You want to make sure that you eat so you feel satisfied. So I'm feeling good. I'm about 75 to 80% full, but I'm not really stuffed feeling. Then, if you're starting to feel hungry about in that 3 hour window, which wouldn't surprise for our teenagers, absolutely, you usually are probably feeling hungry right before practice. Don't eat a full meal. Look at having a small snack or a smaller, easily digestible drink such as a smoothie. If you eat a full meal, you're not going to be feeling good through that practice, or you're just not going to be playing your best during that game because your body's going to be focusing in on trying to digest. Then what do we focus on? We want to focus on obviously those minimally processed or those quality carbohydrates. Right before a game, focus on moderate amounts, so like we had saw in that plate of lean protein. And then right before your game, try to limit or avoid fats and fiber. Dietary fiber right before your game can cause an upset stomach, so try to limit those. So having like a hard-boiled egg, some breakfast potatoes, a couple other veggies, and maybe some fruit or some strawberries on the side. That's a great pre-game meal. Or right before, having some Greek yogurt with some berries, some granola in there, or an apple with a little bit of nut butter, and then a little side of whole grain crackers. That's a great pre-game meal. Keep hydrated, obviously crucial. And then work on making it a habit, because your soccer game is very, very important. Your sport is very important to you. To make this a habit, make sure your body is working for you so you can perform in that game. So then during the game, it's important to focus in on hydration when you're in the middle of your match or your game, replacing that fluid that you're losing when you're sweating and you're breathing hard. Drinking fluids throughout. So throughout practice, if you have any timeouts during halftime, prioritizing that water, so having a bottle of water at all times and then just be sipping it throughout. I would leave the sports beverages until tournament time, and then also not overdoing it. So when you're in the middle of a game, if you're super, super thirsty, maybe don't do 2 of the drinks. Don't drink any more than 32 ounces in one sitting, and because especially during a game, because that's when if you're running and you kind of hear a goo, 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 like gurgling of your belly, that's too much water at that time. Then focusing on sipping, so don't chug your water, but sip. That's going to allow you to rehydrate faster. And then one of my favorite tips is to always have what I call an emergency snack on board. So in your soccer bag, make sure that you have those, that little, like a little bag of pretzel or sports bar, things like that. Make sure you have those emergency snacks available. If you are feeling really hungry, grab that and nibble on some. Okay, so then post-game. So within about 30 minutes post-training or after about 30 minutes after your practice, that's where we want to get a small protein snack in. So think like nut butter on a little bit of crackers or some cheese, stuff like that, or some nuts and seeds. That's where you're going to actually start to rebuild your muscles right away, and that will help to reduce that recovery time that you're looking for. And then also to replace those fluids, so that's where you're wanting to, lots of numbers again on how many ounces you could be doing, but just drink up because you're going to be thirsty. And also sodium or salt is okay to have, especially after a game, because that will help to promote rehydration and prevent low sodium levels in the blood. So what hyponatremia is low sodium levels, and that can make you feeling really sick and nauseated, or that can also cause severe cramping to the muscles. So getting a little bit of salt in there from foods or from a drink is totally okay. About 2 to 3 hours after training is where you should probably eat. That's the best time to eat your big meal. And added the plate of what that moderate training plate looks like, because you don't need as many carbs after the game, just a little bit less of those quality whole grain carbohydrates, a little bit more fruits and veggies. Those will allow for you to get those vitamins and minerals replenished that you're looking for, and make you allow you to feel good, and when you wake up you have energy and you're not feeling as sore. Okay, so then what do you do during tournament times? I know when I was at the tournaments and still in adult league tournaments, we have concession stands. Not sure what exactly it looks like for COVID, but sometimes they'll always have those bag of chips or some candy or sports beverages. Most of the time that's not the best choice for our players during tournament time. If you eat it in the middle of playing your one game before you play your second game, you really might not be feeling good during that second half of that second game. So nutrition preparation is key. Having a big cooler and stocking it full during those tournament days. So for our parents out there, being prepared with having snacks and having meals for our young athletes will really set them up for success. Another thing to note is a lot of our players only drink fluids after a game. That's when they're really thirsty. Makes sense, right? So they want to drink a lot of water right after. The thing is that can cause right between your games, that can cause over drinking and under eating. So as our parents, for our young athletes, making sure that they definitely drink up, but don't drink too much. And make sure to get a snack in there between those games. That'll really help to make sure we're getting that energy to play that whole extra 90 minutes. That's a long time. Okay, well, before we wrap this up, I just wanted to share a quick book if you're looking at learning a little bit more when it comes to sports, focusing on soccer. I think Performance Nutrition for Soccer Players Gain the Advantage from Bob, I'm not very good at this, but Bob Seaboard is a great option. He is a registered dietitian, and he is a certified sports dietitian, has done a lot of work, has done work with the Olympic teams. So he has a lot of really good information, and when you're looking at diving deeper to really perform at your best, this is a great resource for you, because Google can tell you a lot of different things that can get pretty confusing. So that's what we do, is we help kind of shift through it to find the really quality, good information out there. Okay, so now's the time if we have any questions. I'd love to answer a few if we have any. Yeah. All righty. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions, but we will be sharing this information tomorrow. We'd love to hear your feedback. We will be doing another webinar here in the next couple of weeks. We'll focusing in on a little bit more about refueling, but also rest and recovery, and making sure that we eat properly, so we don't cause any more injuries than we necessarily want. So thank you so much. We really appreciated spending the evening with you talking about some sports nutrition, and I will see you soon.